Hello once again. Welcome back to Entertainment ReCast, the podcast offshoot of our YouTube channel, Entertainment Rebooted. I am joined, of course, by my esteemed co-host, DJ. Say hi, DJ.
Hello.
If I can learn how to speak at some point, we'll be speaking on the topic of villains.
Ooh.
Specifically, we have been noticing a trend with villains, specifically Disney villains, where we no longer have the clear-cut bad guy necessarily trope. We don't have a lot of megalomaniacal villains. We don't have a lot of very strong villains. Like, we don't have good
evil
villains.
We don't have evil villains anymore. Good
Exactly.
villains. We don't the entertaining villains. Villains that suck you in.
Exactly. We've noticed a lot of trends where almost it almost feels like in a lot of cases Hollywood is trying to make the villains the good guys. And in specific cases, like in Sony specifically, they do make the villains the good guys for no reason.
And they make them fight worse villains somehow that aren't really any worse than them.
Right. And the thing is that the reason that they're popular is because they're good villains, not good anti-heroes.
Or when they are anti-heroes, they're still foils to the original character that they were made to be a villain of.
Yeah. Anyway, so we are talking about villains. What makes a good villain? What makes a bad villain? We'll be talking about some of the stellar examples that we've had from Disney and other things. For instance, we probably will discuss a little bit about King Magnifico. What makes him such a bad villain as compared to like a Renaissance villain? What really made the Renaissance villains good?
He was right. King Magnifico did nothing wrong.
Well, the thing is, like, literally his, like... Disney
he was the hero and she was the villain.
But the thing is that it's like Disney didn't even realize it, but when they advertised the film, they literally made him out to be, like, not that bad, because he's literally, like, his super poppy, maniacal, evil plan was, I grant some of your wishes, I do all of these things for you, and I let you live in my kingdom for free. So evil.
It's so funny, actually. That's a good place to start. So
yeah,
the problem with that premise is he's right. Because literally everyone gives him their wish.
Yeah. Willingly.
He gives everybody their wish, but he only grants the ones that help the kingdom as a whole. Now, that's dictatorial, but he's what you consider like a bit of a dictator, but people consented to this.
Well, exactly. They consented.
They consent to give them the wish, and he grants the ones that help the kingdom. Some of these people are going to wish. Okay.
Some of these people
go to any city and take 1,000 people and say, I'm going to take one wish from all of you, your biggest wish, and I'm going to grant some of them. Some of those people are going to be like, I want 400 people to die. I want my neighbor to die in a horrible fire. I wish my mother-in-law would burn in a car crash.
I wish my grandparents would die already so I could
inherit. Yes! People are going to wish for some bad stuff.
Or the thing is, you're going to end up with contradictory wishes.
Yes.
Literally, Bruce Almighty touches on this.
Bruce. So that's where I was going to go with this. I'm glad you brought that up. Literally, Magnifico is Bruce Almighty's situation, but he picks and chooses what to grant instead of. Now they talk about that, and Bruce Almighty literally touch on that. It's like, why don't you just give people what they want? It's like, because, and Bruce Almighty does that. He just answers yes to everybody's prayers, and it causes
into chaos.
It dissolves into chaos because like random people like die. There like 1,000 people win the lottery. It's like, and it doesn't even touch on the darker stuff.
It bankrupts the city.
Think of people that you get really dark. Think of people that wish they could like rape someone or like do horrible things to people
and get away with it.
And get away with it. Like people are gonna wish for some really nasty stuff, and you're like, the king is like, I'm only gonna. Now that's worst case scenario.
Well, and
now look if even everybody's wish is benevolent, but it clashes. The baker wants to marry the seamstress, but so does the blacksmith. Which wish do you grant?
Exactly.
It dissolves into chaos, and you have to be choosy, or it's going to break everything.
Well, no, and here's the other thing too about like his wish granting and stuff like that. They're like, oh, it's so evil because he takes their wishes and their dreams and stuff. It's like, are they incapable of making new wishes and new dreams? And the other thing too is they forget that they forget the dream, the wish that they gave to Magnifica.
Yes.
So it's like they're not looking for it. You know, they're not like a big part of my soul.
And he also explains it to them before he does it.
Like it's fully consensual.
It's fully consensual.
And then on top of that, he lets them live in this kingdom for free.
And he also tells them that your wish may not be granted, but you also won't remember you had it. So he's upfront about it too.
And
he's not a villain
about it. He's like, you won't even remember that it's gone.
He's not a villain. He's right. But then, so because of that, they force him into a villain.
Yeah.
This is exactly what they did with Thanos. Is another good example of this.
Okay.
Thanos' motivations were stupid because his math was wrong. But regardless of that, Thanos was right. Thanos was right. No. Randomly killing half of the population of anything is a horrible idea. It might be more merciful and fair, I guess, but if you kill half the population, you destroy supply chains. People flying airplanes kills even other people. Like you're just gonna get chaos.
Yeah.
The movie showed that it was stupid premise. But they tried to make him relatable by like, I'm actually trying to save the universe. But your idea is dumb. So, to fix him as a villain, they broke him in both ways. In the second film, when he's in Endgame, he's like, well, I'll just remake the universe in my image then. And everybody complained because the people that already knew it was wrong, well, that doesn't make him any, he's just still... I don't understand his motivation. I'm still confused. And the people that thought for some reason he was right felt betrayed. Like, well, you just ruined him from being a relatable villain. I was like, well, he never was. You're wrong. I'm sorry, I will fight all of you on the internet. You are objectively wrong if you think he was right. Because his solution doesn't fix anything. If he wanted to fix things, you kill all the people that don't benefit society at all. That's mean and evil, but it's efficient. So I'm sorry, you're wrong.
When we're talking about what makes a good villain, we're actually talking about DJ's origin story. All hail DJ.
I'm just saying. Like, that's the problem. Like, you're trying to make a relatable villain, but you don't do it well. You try to make a villain with motivations that make sense, and you make bad motivations. You try to make the villain the good guy, and it doesn't work.
Or you try to make the villain sympathetic, but
Yes.
you go too far.
Yes.
Like you.
Oh
like,
wait,
literally,
he's right.
Yeah, like literally, like Maleficent. They literally made her like a hero for 3 movies, and it makes her actions that made her the villain in the first place even more stupid.
No, that was actually okay. So I really enjoy Maleficent.
Okay,
it's a great view because she is the villain in the story. They make her relatable, but they do make her the villain. They make it clear that her reaction was an overstep.
Okay,
they make it clear that what she did was wrong. They're not big. Well, she had to do it. You know, it was a foil to that Killmonger and Black Panther, he's right.
That's true. Yeah,
Black Panther Wakanda just sat by and watched horrible atrocities happen and did nothing.
No, and then literally like the end of the film, they open up to the world anyway.
Yes,
so Killmonger got what he wanted. Just he died.
Well, the difference was Killmonger took it too far by wanting to he just instantly went to war.
Yeah,
we're more powerful. Let's blow him off the earth.
Yeah,
he was the extremist version because he was the foil because the T'Challa wanted to take it to the world too. He's like, we should be doing more things. He realized that Killmonger had a point. He just took it too far.
Yeah,
that's he was very relatable in that thing. But also him taking the war route wasn't really off the table because that's what everybody else was doing to Wakanda. They were basically pillaging and stealing from them, and they actually reference the second Avengers film where they had Claw stole from them. You know, that's referenced. Like, people were a mockery to the world. Why are we letting this happen? He's right. We could be a world power. We should be. He was taking the worldly approach, the approach all other nations do. We're gonna flaunt our. He's not. It's just like any other world leader. Like, he's honestly not really in the wrong there. I disagree with his methods and his end game, but he fits in with the world. Yeah. He's a little too. He's just a politician. Like, the guy was relatable. We have people in our country that rule it that do the same things that he's doing, that he did.
Yeah.
We're America. We flaunt our power. You know what I mean? Like, literally. It made sense. Maleficent, it showed really well that she took it too far.
Okay.
She cursed the kid out of a grudge. You know, took it a little far. But I agree with you. The second film, I also really enjoy, but it does kind of mess the first one up, because it's like, you reacted a lot better here. Now you can say, well, she learned and stuff like that, but it takes your character in a little bit different of a direction. It kind of ruins a little bit of her growth in the first film. Yeah. I think that's a problem I've seen with a lot of sequels to these things too. A lot of villains, when they get sequels, the villain's motivations from the original get muddled a little bit. Thanos. Yeah. His motivations change in the second film because he's told that, because he literally is proven that his thing was wrong. It's like, you didn't do what you thought you were going to do. He had to do it to realize it was the mistake. And then once he realizes it, he's like, well, screw it. I don't like that answer, so I'm just going to do it my own way. He's bullheaded. It's just proven he's bullheaded, and he just won't listen to anybody. Right. And people will just he has yes men that follow him. He's an imposing villain, but not a good one. In that way. But he makes a good comic book villain. Because his motivations don't matter.
Well, in the comic books also, his motivations are completely different, and they could be entirely unhinged.
He was in love with death.
Yeah.
He was literally in love with death.
It was a character in the Marvel comics.
Yes, so he was literally trying to send death patrons to, like, as a favor. Death did not appreciate it. Death seeks balance just like everybody else. Stop killing people, you're sending me too many people. But that's an interesting aspect of the comics. They changed the motivations of the film. That's fine. But what made him work as a villain, I'm not saying, I'll clarify here, I'm not saying Thanos was a bad villain. I'm saying his motivations were bad. He was a good villain in spite of his motivations. Yeah. Because he was an opposing figure that was really good foil to a lot of the characters. Like, he thinks he's the good guy, but he's like wiping the floor with everybody.
Right.
Like, his motivations were dumb, but but they don't matter to his character, because what matters more than anything is he's convinced himself he's the good guy. Doesn't matter why. He's delusional. Whatever. Doesn't matter. He thinks he's right, and he's going to mow you over. That's a good villain. So you brought up questions at the beginning. What makes a good villain? What makes a bad villain? Yeah. I have a few points, and I'm sure you do too. So I'll give you a couple that you give. So let's talk about it, because a big thing for me is they need to have a motivation.
Yes, they need to have a good, clear motivation. Yes. Like, the thing is that people are capable of immense evil.
Yes.
But they're also capable of immense good.
Yes.
The thing is their motivation.
Yes.
They need to have strong motivation. But the other thing too is they need to have a clear way of going about that motivation.
Right.
When you have a great motivation, but they go about it in a really bad way, I think that's a bad villain. Because a bad villain, like a good villain, not only has the thing they're trying to achieve, they have the plan put together on how to do it.
And the villain needs to be a roadblock for the hero.
Yeah.
Like, either a roadblock for because the second part is they need to relate to the hero. So
yeah, like foil it or challenge them, or be a.
Why are they the villain to the hero? It can be that matters significantly. What makes a good villain is the villain is in the way of the hero.
Yeah.
Now the hero and villain may not originally be intent. There's a lot of films, and media where the villain and hero are on totally separate paths and intersect, and that's what makes them on the same path as each other.
Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader.
Yes,
they are father and son,
but that doesn't matter.
Their first meeting is literally they run into each other because they're trying to,
and that their relationship doesn't matter to their hero and villain status in the beginning,
right?
Because he runs into him by happenstance. It's fate, because that they were fated to meet because they're related. But that's irrelevant to the original story.
Exactly.
The first film, all that matters is that he's a farm boy that gets thrust into something he wasn't supposed to be part of.
Right.
And now he defeats Darth Vader. A farm boy out of nowhere defeats Darth Vader because of enough teaching that he got. And people have said, like, Luke Skywalker is Mary Sue. You can make that argument a little bit in the first film, but it loses its weight very quickly throughout.
Well, at the same time, though, the thing is that, like, he doesn't fit a lot of the little aspects of Mary Sue. He's immensely powerful. He's the chosen one. You can go with these things where it's just like, he's more powerful than he should be. At the same time, though, he's not Mary Sue because he does struggle.
Yes.
He is bullheaded and stubborn. He doesn't get along with Han Solo immediately. He doesn't immediately woo the princess.
Exactly. And that's why I argue he's not.
Yeah.
And that makes him a good foil. And that's important. If you want your hero to be good, you have to have your villain to be good. You have to have a hero that stands in stark contrast to them.
Right.
But you can have the hero and villain can have similar characteristics. A good example of that is Tony Stark. He's narcissistic. He's a bully. He's an asshole. Yeah. He does these things that are just uncalled for, but he's the hero. But he moves past those characteristics.
Yeah, it's like he has good motivations, but he goes about it in the narcissistic, jerky kind of way.
But he finds his path. But he improves. And
but his motives are always good.
Yes,
that's what makes him a good. Like, that's why I said the motive has to be clear.
Yes.
And usually when it comes to the villain, that motive has to come directly in contrast to the quote unquote greater good.
That's why the villain in that one is a great villain. They have the in-fight scene when he's like fighting him in the robot, but that's not the villain he's fighting. Yeah. The villain he's fighting is the guy he thought was his best friend who betrayed him behind his back his entire life. Right. That's what makes him the villain.
Right.
They did that well too. Another good example of that doing well was Ant-Man and Wasp.
Right.
The villain was just another guy in an Ant-Man suit. Yes, but that's not what makes him the villain. The villain part is that he ripped apart this guy's his mentor's company from the ground up and took it over and turned it into something it was never meant to be.
Right. And he took this he took the motives of advancing science for the betterment of humankind into bettering humankind through superior warfare.
And it's a vacuum that was, there was a vacuum with Tony Stark going out, so that the universe has a vacuum now. And so this guy wanted to fill it. Like this, that makes and it interconnects to the rest of the whole story. It's great storytelling and great villain.
Yeah.
That's what made him a good villain. That's what made Killmonger a good villain. The best parts of those films when they're foiling is when they're dialoguing. When the fights at the end of the films is actually the most boring interactions of those characters, because it's just Ant-Man fighting Ant-Man, Black Panther fighting Black Panther.
Right. And it's a visual spectacle. Yep. It's a ultimate climax for the people who aren't necessarily paying attention to the winning of the dialogue.
Yep. And a lot of people, I heard their biggest complaints was the end fight scene was kind of lame. Like, I didn't like the villain because the last time you see the villain is them fighting in a suit. But in Black Panther, the last time you see him is when he's standing on the edge and T'Challa has to kill him. Yeah. He's like, hey, don't bury me. Bury me in the ocean where our ancestors before they came. He was stuck on the past.
Yeah. T'Challa
was looking to the future. They both knew mistakes had been made and things should have been right, but they took totally different paths in it.
Right.
T'Challa could have easily been Killmonger. Very easily. Yeah. The motivations were the same. The difference was their perspectives
and how they got to
one was
solutions.
Pessimistic and one was optimistic.
Yeah.
That was what changed those characters. Those are great foils. Those make great villains. Foils make good villains. Classic Disney villains are different types of motivations, where instead of like having similar motivations or things, it was simple human emotions. with the the evil queen in Snow White, it's jealousy.
Right. It's
Pure
really,
jealousy.
and it's a petty emotion, but it's a very clearly defined motive.
Yes.
Like that's the thing too. Is it's just like
it's petty, but people have killed in real life over jealousy.
Well, exactly.
Like that's a real motivation for murder.
Well, no, it literally is teaching a moral.
Yeah.
It's literally teaching how dangerous jealousy can be.
Yes.
If you let it stir up and brew to the point where you're willing to murder over it.
Yep.
When we look at it from the outside looking in, we're like, oh my gosh, that's so stupid. That's ridiculous. Why would you kill somebody because you're jealous of a 15-year-old? And it's like, because
it happens.
It happens. Like, so-and-so's younger and they're more beautiful than I am. They need to go away.
That's one of the things where the parents like those murder shows where like a mother killed her kids because she was like jealous of her kids, or like where a lot of like even if it's not murder, like a lot of like disproportionate amounts of jealousy were pushed out in like abuse, like emotional abuse.
Yeah,
the parents will abuse their kid, mothers abusing daughters, daughters using sons, but like because they feel inadequate, so they project that onto their kids. Those emotions carry extreme, lasting, generational weight.
Yeah.
And that is a very clear motive. And it's like, and they put magic and like sorcery and that's all they did. They took a real thing that's a real problem and masked it in high fantasy.
Put it at a grand scale kind of thing. They took it to its ultimate, to an ultimate end.
Sleeping Beauty, she felt slighted.
It was what happened in the court was rude.
Yes.
Like it literally was just.
It was a slight.
Yeah, it was a slight.
The original telling of it is very similar with some differences, but there's a lot of things involved in that. But the Disney version was taken from the aspect of it's the royal court committed an offense. Yeah. It was a slight to her. It was rude and yes. And she reacted, and then she reacted out of jealousy and rage. She put a curse on a kid to get back. Like she took it too far. It's another example of an example of hey, is a slight in a court is someone being rude to you on the subway worth murdering a person over? You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
and it's anger, it's rage.
Yes.
It's the thing of like her motives are clear though. She wanted to get back at the court.
Yep.
How did she do it? She went to an extreme. You know why? She's a villain.
Yep.
Like villains usually are just people that take something to an extreme to teach a lesson.
Cruella de Vil is a good example of this. Her only motive was she wanted to make a skin coat out of dogs.
Because she liked the fur.
Because she liked the pattern.
Yeah.
But she went insane with it, and she took it so far as to really want to commit murder of people to get what she wanted.
Exactly.
It was obsession. With her, it was obsession.
It was obsession over a fashionable object.
Yep. She was obsessed. She vowed obsession over something so far she was willing to kill over it. Makes a good villain. Facilier from Princess and the Frog. His ambition was he was tired of being, he didn't want to be a small town person. He wanted to be powerful. Yeah. He wanted to be somebody. And he was willing to be manipulated to get it and to manipulate.
Yeah. Frollo, he wanted purity and power. But he also struggled with lust. Like his thing was he wanted Esmeralda, and eventually it got to the point
where he said either I have Esmeralda for myself or she has to die.
And I will burn all of Paris if I have to.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, literally, a lot of people are like, man, he burned down half of Paris because of a boner. That's his motive, though. His motive was literally he wanted Esmeralda, and he didn't know how to go about it.
They do a good job of showing that.
Yeah.
And making it believable. The Tarzan.
Oh, yeah, Clayton.
Clayton just wanted to hunt gorillas.
It
was a trophy hunter. That's all it was.
Yep.
But because the gorillas were a character, it became a problem. Yeah. That made him a good villain. He had a simple motivation, and he took it to the extreme.
Yeah. And that's
greed. It was greed and avarice.
Exactly. Like, that's what makes really good villains. And the thing is that it's like, there's some trope villains, like the joke is like the Disney twist villain. Some of the twist villains are actually just really great.
Yes. Some are
of them,
bad.
Yeah, some are bad, but some of them are really good.
Okay, I'll give you an example of bad one. You give me an example of a good one. So, bad one, Hans from Frozen. I talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
He's not really a villain. It feels like he's the villain. He's not, though. He doesn't become a villain until the very end of the film, and then doesn't do anything with it. He's like a throwaway. Like, he doesn't matter. And they do a poor job of setting him up as a villain because the foreshadowing is done poorly. And his motivations don't make a lot of sense. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm gonna marry into the family and then kill you off so I can be in charge. That's not how monarchy works. The person born is the king, the regent. The person who marries into the family is just the wife or husband of the monarch. Well, they have no real power in European monarchies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just a weird. It doesn't make any sense. And he doesn't he doesn't play. And when he becomes the villain, it's like his little speech and stuff is really well done, but it doesn't fit anything that's happening around it. Yeah. And there's a lot of speculation, especially in the. It's kind of an abstract, but there's actually a video game, Kingdom Hearts, that almost proved this. That Elsa was originally meant to be the villain.
Yeah.
That would turn at the end, but they didn't like that, so they last minuted it. And through Whistleton was supposed to be like he was always supposed to be like the he was supposed to be like the red herring villain always, but then they switched the main villain from Elsa to Hans. But Elsa really is the villain in that movie still, because she's pushing everybody away.
Right.
That wants to help her. She accidentally almost kills several people. She turns the place into winter. Yes, it's accidental, but she doesn't do anything about it. She hides herself away. She is the villain in that movie. Because she's the one causing all the problems and doing everything. And then her sister brings her back off the brink.
Right.
Her sister saves her from being the villain. That is what happens in that movie. I just think they made her less of the villain than she originally was. I think maybe in the original adaptation, she went a little more megalomaniacal and then backed off.
Well, yeah, she was supposed to be the Ice Queen.
Yeah, the Ice Queen. Yeah. Exactly. But they don't, I still will say she is the villain in that movie. She's the unintentional villain of the film. Regardless of what they meant to do, she's the real villain. Yeah. She doesn't mean to be, but that doesn't matter. Like, there's other films where the villain doesn't know they're the bad guy. Thanos thinks he's the good guy. And from his perspective, he's the good guy. He thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Rorschach and what's that one? Oh my gosh, I'm gonna remember it. Watchmen.
Yeah.
He's not the good guy. There's like, oh, he's the hero. No, he's not. He takes getting to the truth to the extreme, to the point where he will get people killed to find the truth. But the point of that whole story arc is, was he right, or was what's his name right? I project that they're both wrong. They both took their things to the extreme. There was a way that they could have negotiated this out, and instead they both just took their extreme stance and went to the death over it.
Yeah.
It's those are characters that people see as heroes. And I think that started turning the Hollywood thing when they started turning villains heroes. People wanted to relate to villains more, and they just started making them.
They started making them almost good guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
But to foil to that is I've seen a lot of people mistake villains or antiheroes as good guys. And that's another problem that feeds into this. Good example of that is Rick and Morty. People worship Morty. Rick is not a hero. He's not a good character. He's horrible. The people are like, oh, he's misunderstood. No, He's got a tragic past, but he took that and made it into a sob story as an excuse to be a terrible person.
Well, and like the show literally like paints a very clear picture that everywhere he goes is awful.
Yes.
Like he does the worst thing to people because he's just awful to people.
He is in the show makes it clear he's awful and he's a villain.
Yeah.
He's the protagonist, but he's not the hero.
No. Most of the time, it's them fixing an issue that he created.
Yes. It's literally the show is me facing the consequences of my own actions. The show, and people hero worship Rick, and it's like he's not a hero. He's also not the villain, but he's not the hero either.
No,
he's a force of nature, is what he is that pushes on the universe, and he's that's. You have to be careful how you interpret characters, because how we interpret characters is how we're going to get them.
Right.
And we as an audience need to be careful how we interpret villains and heroes, because a lot of times we mix it up. Another good example is Dexter. Right. Dexter is a serial killer that kills other serial killers. People applauded him. And we're talking about how he's the good guy. No. The show makes it clear that he's not a good person. Well, he just managed to limit his problem to a set of people that he thinks deserves it.
He's still a homicidal maniac. Yes. It's just he's killing off people that we deem undesirable.
Yes.
We just agree with him because he also deems them undesirable and worthy of death.
Yes. That does not make him a hero. He's a bad person.
Yeah.
You have to be careful who you idolize, because Dexter is an example of the hero of the story. He's the protagonist, not the hero.
Yeah.
The villain can be a protagonist too. Hannibal Lecter is the protagonist. He is the villain. That's the point. People are like, man, he's such a good hero. What are you talking about?
He's talking about the TV version?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Not Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal, the show.
Okay.
That's a prequel to it. Yes. Like, he's not the good... Why? No. He's the villain. This is a villain origin story.
Right. Yeah.
Megamind is a great example of this. It's a great example of a villain turned hero. It does it well. He's a good villain. He's a good villain with clear motivations. Once he gets stripped of his motivations, he doesn't know what to do with it. It turns out, I'm a villain for the wrong reasons. I don't need to be a villain. I could be anybody. What's wrong with me?
Well, yeah.
Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog.
It's true.
Is basically Megamind.
It pretty much
first,
is.
But
well, the difference is that people always misunderstood him to the point where he thought he had to be evil in order to get recognition. When he started getting recognition for it, he faced the consequences of his own actions.
Which only pushed him further over the edge.
Yeah, exactly.
Great villain origin story.
Yeah.
These are examples of good villains that are shown well. The movie Joker does a really good job of showing a motivation for a character. Joker has always been an interesting character in DC Comics because he's had multiple origins that have always changed. And they play on that.
Yeah.
And that was one of my greatest versions of him ever done is Dark Knight. Because they take... his origins changes every time he tells it, and it's so good to that character. Well, which was the real one? Doesn't matter. He's insane. He's a force of nature.
Well, exactly. And the thing is that it's like that's really accurate to the comics and stuff too. Like literally, he manipulated Harleen Quinzel.
Yep.
Because he literally gave her an origin story that he knew she would sympathize with, and in the animated series, Batman actually points it out. He's like, okay, which one did he tell you? Was it the one where his dad took him to the circus and he blah, 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 blah. And he literally like says the story. And then Harley's like, no, but that's not true. It wasn't the circus. It was the movies or something like that. And it's like.
The Harley Quinn was also a really good villain.
Harley Quinn is a great
She's an amazing villain because she splits the difference. She worships Joker because she feels sorry for him, but she doesn't realize she's being manipulated. And once she realizes she's being manipulated, she still has legitimate feelings for him, but he doesn't reciprocate it. She's a tool to him.
And she is forced to gaslight herself, which is ironic because she's actually a psychologist.
Yep. Which is very interesting, and she is a character that's been done very different ways.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of ways you can take a character like that.
In some versions, her and Joker actually are deeply in love.
Yeah.
And those versions are fun too. There's different ways you can do that. That's another fun way. You can adapt characters and villains in different ways and make them interesting. As long as you make their motivations clear. I'm starting to realize as I get older that there's a lot of villains I hated when they changed them. I realized it wasn't because they changed them. It's because how they changed them.
Yeah.
How they did it mattered more than they did. Because I go back and tell like, wait a minute. I read the Lord of the Rings books and I've watched the films. There's some changes in motivations of some characters, but I liked it in the Saruman is treated a little differently in the film than in the book. They change a lot about his character, but it works really well. Why? He's still a compelling villain despite the changes.
Right.
But then oh my gosh, I don't remember the name of this film. Speed Racer, the live action film. It's a piss poor adaptation of that, but that's not the biggest problem with it. The villain's terrible. Because it's like you adapted this thing and you didn't do anything with his motivations. Don't make any sense. The hero's motivations, he has no foil. There's no change. The villain was just like a corrupt racer. Like this is the way you do things matters. Alita Battle Angel. It's like basically shot for shot remake of the original animation, but they do change some character aspects, some motivations. They still work because even though they changed some of the characters, the new motivations still make sense.
Right.
The character works. Thanos, the comic book adaptation's motivations were very different from the film.
But
his motivations are dumb, but they're clear. You know what they are, and he believes in it. It doesn't matter if you do. He does.
Well,
yeah. You could have a villain's motivations could be. You have to understand this. Villains' motivations can be stupid.
Well, yeah. I mean,
as long as they're clear and they believe in them, it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, yeah. Think about like Dr. Evil. Dr. Evil is literally a comedic villain.
Yes.
His motivations are always ridiculous. His goals are always ridiculous.
Yes.
He's still a great villain.
Yes, because his actual plots aren't enacted and they're terrible.
Wonka.
Oh,
Wonka is a great example of great villains because literally their motivation is literally just we make chocolate and we overcharge people for crummy chocolate. Anybody else who tries to sell chocolate that is not one of the three of us needs to go away.
It was a monopoly. It's a simple motivation. We want to maintain the monopoly, but and not even for profits. It actually makes it like the movie makes it almost clear. Like you're watching it, there's no way because their chocolate is awful. Like their
chocolate is poor quality. It's cheaply made. It's overpriced. Not everybody is buying it. You'll notice at the stores
they don't even like it. When they eat Wonka's chocolate, they're excited to eat it.
Yeah, no, they're like, it's a shame that it's really good.
I know. Like what's funny is they could have made better chocolate and still made more money. Their motivations are horrible. Yeah. But they're so convinced. They're so used to that way and they're so convinced of it.
Yeah, that they're willing to kill for it. But the other thing is that literally the infrastructure that they have to maintain their little monopoly, they have a secret church full of secret people who are on their payroll so that they can pay off the government officials that are also on their payroll in order to keep a vault of chocolate that they're not going to release to the public, a massive amount of chocolate that they keep in a very remote place away from their stores. All of it is just ridiculous if you think about it, but their motivation is clear. We are the only people who make chocolate in town.
Yep.
That's it. That's their motivation. And they literally go to the extent of, we will kill Willy Wonka because he is threatening our little monopoly.
The funny thing is that movie, whatever its message was meant to be, the true message it gives off is that their villainy it wasn't the monopoly or the power or the money. It was the status quo.
Yeah.
They were married to keeping things the way they are.
Right.
They were proved by Wonka there's a better way. But they didn't care. They were willing to give up themselves. They were willing not to have better chocolate, even for themselves.
Right. It had to be simple.
It had to be this because it has to be the way that it is. Yep. We don't change things. Things are the way they are, and they're going to stay that way.
Right.
They were stuck in the status quo, and they could not get out of it. There were better ways to maintain a monopoly than the way they did it. But they were used. This is the way it's always been, and this is the way it will always be. And they were. That's a good villain mentality.
Yep.
The Village.
Okay, yeah.
The Village does that. What was the villain mentality of the villains were the adults.
Yeah, all they wanted to do was isolate themselves from society.
They wanted to maintain
they
wanted to maintain things the way they were.
Yep.
They set aside themselves from society, and they did not want that to change.
Right.
They refused to allow it to change, and they were all victims. They were all in a psychiatric ward together. But they took it too far, and they were punishing further generations for things they dealt with. It's not fair.
No, it's not. No, that's the thing, is that making a good villain, I think, is a pretty simple thing. You can have a very simplistic formula, and some people can be like, oh, but then it's tropey, then it's lame, then it's all these different things. Honestly, when it comes to creating a villain, all you have to do is you have to give them clear motivation, and you have to give them some way that is overpowering, and you have to put them in foil with your hero.
That's it. That's the list.
Like, that's literally what you have to do. Like,
clear, no matter how silly, how stupid they are, no matter what they are, the motivations have to be clearly understood. You need to understand what the motivations of the villain are. You have to understand why them and the villain them and the hero are clashing. Why the villain and hero are clashing. What's causing them to clash with each other? What's the contention that they have? That needs to be clear.
Yeah.
And understood. And yes, and you need to
to make them threatening to.
Yes, you need to make them powerful, threatening. You need to make them a real threat. The villain needs to be a real threat.
Yeah.
If they're not a real threat, they're not a villain.
Right.
They're an obstacle. That's the difference between an obstacle and a villain. An obstacle is just it's like somebody that doesn't like you but doesn't do anything. That's the difference between a henchman and the villain. Yeah. Henchmen aren't the villain. We don't call the henchmen villains. They work for the villain. They're in the way. They're a roadblock. They're a character piece, but they're not the villain.
And also, when it comes to sequels and stuff like that, if you're going to have the same villain in your sequel, you have to leave your villain off in a position where they are still higher and threatening to your hero. That's part of the reason that I think Star Wars, the original trilogy, really works, and the sequel trilogy by Disney does not work at all. In the original Star Wars trilogy, we leave off Darth Vader has killed Luke's mentor. He is still threatening. He is still powerful. Yes, we leave him floating around in space in a TIE fighter, but he's still active and he's still present, and he literally almost destroyed Luke if it hadn't been for Han Solo's intervention.
Yep.
He is a threatening character. He is still a threatening character. When we see him in The Empire Strikes Back, he is still in a position of authority. He is still terrifying. He is still
even more
powerful.
So, because we end that one with him cutting off Luke's hand.
Exactly, and winning the duel.
Yes.
And then, so the third
By
film...
the third film, he's getting more threatening, not less, as
exactly.
we go.
Whereas the sequel trilogy, which I'm just going to admit, I didn't bother watching the last one, but I've seen the first two. In that one, the villain was relatively threatening and stuff like that. I didn't like that he had the emotions of a teenager. But at the same time...
I would have been fine with that if they started it that way, and then he got more threatening as they went.
But the thing is that...
less threatening.
Yeah, the problem is that at the end of the first film, Rey beat him.
Yes.
Handedly in combat. Like, beat him. The second film, he shows up, and he's literally a joke. Like, he showed up in the film, and I was waiting for a new, more threatening villain to show up. I thought Snoke was going to be the new, more threatening villain, and they killed him and had Ben Kenobi, or not Ben,
which
Kenobi,
would have
Ben
worked
Solo
if that was Ben Solo going. If Kylo Ren had become the villain he needed to be, and that was the problem. Like they sold up the Knights of Ren as this massive organization. When they finally show up, they get whipped to death by Kylo himself.
Yeah,
like my brother actually, Jordan actually said something about it. It's like the second film would have worked a lot better if Kylo Ren came with the Knights of Ren and just started wreaking havoc.
Yeah, like,
because they would
to get his focus in.
Like that should have been what it was. That should have been him like going full villain, but instead he has a joke of a villain the entire time, and and it's like that those films are just there's a lot of problems with it, but the bad villain is one of the biggest problems, and you're trying to recreate Darth Vader, and they did it. It was like,
poorly.
First of all, that's never going to work. You can't remake him. Stop trying to make him. Lucas did it with his villains in the prequels. He kept trying to remake Darth Vader. I was like, stop trying to make Darth Vader and just make a new villain.
That's right.
Mandalorian did that well. They made new villains.
Yeah.
And then still ended up making Darth Vader villain. But it's
no, and like to avoid like long conversation on Star Wars, we can have a whole podcast on that, whole series of podcasts, in fact, on that.
Right.
But I would argue that literally the way that you save the sequel trilogy as in regards to villains is because Kylo Ren got his butt kicked. He is no longer a good villain. Make Rey the villain. Make him the hero because he got his butt kicked. And now he's going...
That would have been a far more interesting turn if Rey turned to the dark side, and then now Ben's like, oh crap, she becomes a better villain than he ever was.
Yeah.
And because he is a joke of a villain, not just because he's not threatening.
He's not threatening. And then the other thing too is like all of the surrounding cast, his menacing surrounding cast, are all made jokes. Like General Hux
makes fun of him. He's
literally a slapstick joke the entire film.
Imagine if someone did that to Vader. Like the guy that backtalks him in the first film when they're having the Council of Moffs, he immediately starts choking the dude out on the council, and nobody does anything. Eventually, Tarkin's like,
except
"Hey,
Tarkin
can you stop?"
Yeah, well,
because Tarkin holds the leash, because Tarkin is the Emperor's left-hand guy. He outranks Vader, so he speaks for the Emperor when he's not around. That's why he listens to him. But once Moff Tarkin dies, Vader on the second film he's off the leash, and he just starts killing everybody,
choking people. But see,
menacing as hell heck.
But that's the thing is like with sequels and stuff like that, you have to keep your villain in a position where they are still more menacing, or you have to change up the structure of the villains. Like think about Indiana Jones. So Indiana Jones, technically the sequel is The Last Crusade.
Yes.
In The Last Crusade, it's still the Nazis. They changed up the power structure to where they were still threatening, and it has a new villain in charge. It's the same quote-unquote villains, technically. It's just
but a different set of
structure.
people.
Yeah, different power structure.
Another good example of this is Return of Jafar. Yeah. So the original Aladdin had Jafar as the villain. The second one had Jafar as the villain again. But his motivation is now... it used to be power. Now it's revenge. Right. His motivation's changed. And they play that out really well. And he starts winning. He's winning.
Yeah.
In the first one, he fights tooth and nail to finally win, then gets capped.
Yeah.
In the second one, he wins. He gets everything he wants. And it's only they have to actually kill him in this one to win.
Yeah.
They have to beat him like in a fair fight. First one, he's just tricked.
Yeah.
And the second one, it's like a continuation of like, that's a good way of continuing the villain.
Yeah. No, and that's even like in Disgrace or something like that. But the thing is that when you have a returning villain, they have to have either a different clear motivation, but they still have to come out in a position of power in some way.
Yeah.
Like you literally can have it where, yes, I defeated this villain in the first film. Second film, he comes around and he's now under a new person, but he's secretly taking control of it. And the organization he's a part of is more powerful than the one that he was in charge of last time. Like that's the thing, is it's literally something as simple as that. You have to keep your villains threatening, and your villains have to be more powerful. Like I say have to, but kind of they have to be more powerful than your hero is perceived to be.
That's actually part of the reason. I think this is where I'll close my remarks, but I think that's part of the reason why Marvel kills off their villains.
Yeah.
In the films, because they don't have to deal with that.
Right.
They kill off their villains every time because if they're dead, they don't have to deal with bringing them back or figuring out how to use them. They didn't kill off Blanksy and they brought him back for the She-Hulk show in a really fun way. He's like all zen and he's like made up for his mistakes. But I will argue, and this is actually canonical in the MCU, Blonsky didn't do anything wrong. They made him to fight the Hulk, and he did exactly what he was made to do. And he was a soldier following orders. He did exactly what he was told to do,
Yeah.
and it was like, and
Well,
they
he's not
and they
like a
punished
villain. He's like a henchman.
Yes, but
Yeah.
and then they punish him for it. But there's a short called The Consultant.
Okay.
And they actually talk about this in the Consultant, but there's a scene, after credit scene, where Iron Man goes up to the general and goes, hey, and talks to him about we're forming a team or whatever. The point of that was they originally were going to put Blonsky on the Avengers.
Huh.
And S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't like that. So they sent Tony Stark to try to sell it, knowing that he would botch it.
Makes sense.
But it's actually, it was a way of them kind of retconning why is this soldier put in prison when he was doing exactly what he was told to do. Because if you would have put him on the Avengers, he would have followed, he would have, whatever Cap told him to do, he would have done it. He took it a little far, but he still did what he was following.
He's following orders.
The general went overboard. And this is why I wanted to bring all this up. You were just talking about, you have to keep your villains consistent. You have to give them reasons. The General Ross shows up in Avengers: Age of Ultron as, after I reformed and I'm no longer just going after the Hulk. Like he doesn't say that, but he's like I'm doing things by the book now. You know, I was like, you were the problem in that movie, and
Yeah.
Abomination is sitting in jail for something you did, and you get to sit up here on your high horse telling the Avengers that they have overstepped when you are worse than them. That doesn't hold any weight to me anymore.
Yeah.
I now hate you because this doesn't work. You are the worst person for this because you were literally part of the problem.
Right.
You were part of the problem, and now you're trying to make that kind of consistency causes problems. This villain is supposed to be the good guy now. How are we supposed to believe that when
Right.
when Abomination is serving your sentence for you?
Yeah.
And then they bring Abomination back in She-Hulk. This had long-lasting MCU complications. You created a chain event of problems because you messed up one villain.
Right.
You now have to be consistent with that. People say, well, it doesn't really matter that much. When the connected universe, it does. When you take a character who was very important earlier on and you make him a different position, you very darn well that you're doing it right. Or it's going to cause problems. Consistency is key. I've heard so many people online and the internet everywhere talk about how consistency in heroes is key. But for some reason, villains get a pass. They require consistency too.
They do require consistency. There's stuff that can change about it. It's like you can change their motives. You can change the way that they go about it. But they have to be pretty consistent in what their goals are.
Yes.
Like the thing is that they're overarching
Or if
goals.
they change, you need to make a darn good reason why.
Yes, or you need to make it a point that when they do it, it's menacing now.
Yes.
Like Lex Luthor becomes president.
Yes.
That's still menacing because has Lex Luthor really changed? Is he really wanting to be on the side of good? Or is he still on the motivation of humans need to get rid of aliens like Superman? And Superman is the ultimate threat.
That is a good one to end on, I think. This whole discussion. Lex Luthor is an amazing example of a well thought out villain. His motivations, he thinks he's the good guy.
Yeah.
He believes that humankind is hurt by superheroes and aliens. He believes that all they do is fix people's problems and they don't fix their own problems. And because they don't, they're weak.
Yeah.
His philosophy is sound. If people are just saving us all the time, we never grow. Like his adversity is our strength. It's like his motivation in life.
Yeah.
And he believes that being taken away is bad. But he makes very questionable alliances with other people that don't have his same motivations, that do want to do things that he doesn't want to get his way. And that is something people do. People will compromise their beliefs to get their way. He's a great villain because he compromises. What makes him a villain is he compromises what would make him a good guy into a villain by doing bad things and working with even worse people than himself to get his way.
Well, it's like Belloc. In Indiana Jones.
Yes.
He straight up says, I don't agree with these guys at all, ideologically. They have money, they have funding, they have men. They can get me my goal, and they're interested in this goal. The Fuhrer wants to get the Ark of the Covenant. So do I. That's the only thing that connects him to the Nazis. The only thing.
But that's just it. People will alliance with horrible people to get their way, because World War II we allianced with Russia, who was doing the same thing to their people that Hitler was doing to his. I've had people say, "Well, did he kill Jews?" He killed the same amount of people. Why does it matter if they were?
He killed more people.
Yes,
he killed anybody that displeased him. Like he was even more unstable in some cases.
For some reason, people will tell me Hitler is more evil because he killed people because they were Jewish, rather than because they were poor or were politically invaluable. Like, the motivations don't matter. He killed millions of his own people for selfish reasons. A genocide is a genocide. I killed my own people because they were poor is not any worse than I killed my own people because they're Jewish. Like, you're still murdering your own people.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's awful. It's genocide.
Yes.
It's terrible.
But Hitler killed Jews, communists, gays, anyone that disagreed with him politically. Like, they were jailed or killed. Like, they were all put in camps. Like, this was the thing. The Jewish got the brunt of it. But, like, that's what dictators do. Like in Maui, when they were ethnic cleansing their own people, they were out. You're the wrong ethnicity of our nation, so they were killing millions of people. That's what dictators do. Yeah. Kill anyone that doesn't think the same way as me, because those people are dangerous. Because they don't think the same way as me, they're a threat to my power.
Well, yeah, that's like the principle of any dictatorship and the majority of revolutions and stuff like that.
Those are real life villains.
Yeah,
and villains in media. You know, you can take cues from those people, the things they do, what do dictators do, what do real life villains do, what do serial killers do. These are often motivations and ways to bring real life into characters in fiction.
Yeah.
Just do it well. Like, make the villains believable, make them horrible, make them evil. Now, as a caveat, I don't mean you can't make redeemable villains. You can't make... Just don't make them all that way. Don't make all your villains... Or even have villains. There's been villains that don't even have a villain. That's fine, too. Inside Out doesn't even have a villain. There's no villain in Inside Out.
Well, no.
But it's a good film.
Yeah, it's just internal
conflict. It's an internal conflict. Yeah. You can still do that. My point is, if you're going to put a villain in a film, be aware of what your villain's doing. Because... there's this poor villain. There's a lot of good villains still being made. There's also a lot of weird choices being made by companies like Disney that used to make really good villains that are suddenly struggling to make villains. Marvel's having that struggle. They made really good villains early on.
But lately their villains have all really, really struggled. Like, they brought Kang in. King the Conqueror, and literally the first film that he shows up and he gets his butt kicked by Ant-Man.
Butt kicked is strong. It's actually the ants actually are
the ants, but you know what I mean.
Wins. Like, but yeah, but that actually I'm okay with. Like, even a character with weak power can beat the villain. The thing about Kang is a multiversal enemy. There's Kang. There's a council of kings.
Yeah,
that's what makes him dangerous. There's more than one of him, and as a group, they are dangerous. He was a rogue one. I actually liked King as the villain in that one. I apparently am the minority in this. Nobody liked King, but he was very. He was King. He was very like true to the comic character, where he has different motivations of different versions of himself, and. I just really enjoyed him. Like, I will destroy universes to keep myself at bay. Yeah. So far, the two versions of King that we've seen have both been Kings trying to keep King from destroying the world. One was keeping the multiverse at bay by using the Time Authority, by just keeping the multiverse from happening at all. And the other one was the one from Ant-Man, where he was trying to save the universe by destroying every universe where King exists. But that's the evil. They were doing terrible things because they thought it was the right thing to do, and they were stuck in it. That made them good villains to me. Ant-Man and Wasp, my problem with that film was mostly the heroes were not good foils to the villain. The villain was the better character in that movie, and he doesn't fit well in that film.
Yeah.
He would be better introduced in an Avengers film or in a higher stakes Gambit, but they did it where he chose. I hope they do not toss him and continue to use him and just do better with him.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Well, we'll see.
That's the future. We're going to look, there's a lot of films coming out in the next couple of years that I'm looking forward to. And I'm really wondering if they're going to learn from these things that they've done. And if, some of the things we've said have, they've already thought of, or people have said to them, maybe they'll take it to heart.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's our discussion on villains. What makes them good? What makes them tick, so to speak. Speed of ticking, why don't you tick that like button and that subscribe button that's right next to it. It's awful conveniently located there. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think makes a good villain? What is your favorite twist villain in Disney films? I probably would have to go with Commander Rourke in Velocity of
Atlantis.
Yeah.
That's a good twist villain.
Yeah. That's probably one of my favorite twist villains. The worst one, in my opinion, was when Buzz Lightyear fights Buzz Lightyear.
Oh, and Buzz Lightyear, that was a bad twist villain.
Yeah. Anyway, let us know your thoughts, your favorite twist villain, and etc. in the comments below. If you are not on YouTube, check us out on YouTube at Entertainment Rebooted. Otherwise, check us out on Facebook at, again, Entertainment Rebooted. Who'd have thought? Otherwise, we will see you guys in the next one.